Hello and welcome everyone on Twitch and in the universe out there today. Welcome to our Shakespeare Shakedown, all right? Lots of shakes, lots of showing down. Do we have milkshakes maybe? Just shake a little bit. Maybe some of us are cold. We don't know. But welcome. I am Pandora.
I'm Alectrona.
I'm Melinoe.
And I'm Selene.
And we are Vixens on Guard. Thank you so much for being here. So what is this thing you're watching right now? So normally when we are doing our shows for you, and we miss all of you, we highlight important moments of Shakespearean text in our shows, but really we're spending a lot of time having fun, aren't we, ladies? Right? Yeah, we're doing pop references, we're telling the story, the summary of the story, and we're doing all the sword fights and all the naughty bits. We like to get our hands on his bits, but this is our time to get our hands on his words. Okay, so we are going to dive in today, you know, a little bit less puppets, a little bit more prose. And a lot of enthusiasm for a chance to break down and shake down the bard. All right, so what are we going to be looking at today? We're looking at 4 pieces of Shakespearean text. This is a new thing. In the last shakedown, we actually looked at 1 long speech for the whole time, but this time we're going to look at 4 little pieces, just little pieces. And let's tell you what those are. So I'm going to be working on or diving into a piece from Lady M, Lady Macca's, Lady M, can't say her name out loud, from the play Mac. Who's working on what next? Alectrona, what are you doing today?
I'm going to be working on a monologue from King Lear. It's going to be my daughter, Goneril.
Lovely, can't wait. I believe our next person will be Melinoe.
Yes. So I am going to look at Joan La Pucelle in Henry VI, Part 1.
Henry VI, Part 1. So many parts, so little time. Oh, I don't have any parts right now, though. Look, can't see a single thing.
You look fabulous.
Oh, and we have, of course, Selene. What are you going to be sending us out on?
Sending us out on a comedy, actually. I didn't expect that I would find myself doing one of the comedies for this, but we have Rosalind from As You Like It, which is
nice.
Just delightful. Put the night away on a light note.
Who doesn't need a little bit of a laugh right now? And while we will be having a lot of fun tonight, we want to tell everyone that the reason we specifically chose these pieces are all to honor the late Ruth Bader Ginsburg. So in your own way, descent on your own, put on your, what do they call that?
Collar?
Her collar. Her collar as being raised by wolves. I know exactly what that is. But let's honor a very strong woman who did so much for all of us with these strong Shakespearean women, which have done so much for us as vixens. And if you want to follow along tonight, you can look at the text. We're all using Folger's Shakespeare. There's lots of different ways you can look at Shakespeare text. So we're going to use things from the Folger library. If you want to follow along, you can search the play. We'll give you the act and the scene and maybe a line of the text to start off, or at least the character that we're working with. And that way you could look it up and follow along if you want to read whilst we read. I recently learned how to read, so this is very exciting. All right, so I think we should dive in unless there's anything else we need to talk about. No, shall we dive in? I'm really excited about this. All right, so I'm first. I'm going to be doing, like I said, the Lady M speech. This is from MB, the play, Macca's, McDonald's, McNugget. You know what I mean, right? And we'll be doing a speech from Act 1, Scene 7. And I'll give you a moment to look at that. The speech will start with, "Was the Hope drunk?" And this is Lady M talking to her husband. Just as a little backdrop for back story, context for this while you're looking that up. The play Macbeth is actually a wonderful tragedy about Hubris gone wrong. So this whole play basically is about three witches, played by scarves or balls, of course, in our production, who tell a Scottish general, Macbee, that he will become king of Scotland if he has enough strength to do what it takes, whatever that means. And so, encouraged by his wife, which is the speech, or the person I would be playing in this speech, Macbee actually kills the current king of Scotland, Duncan, and becomes the new king. And then a lot of people die. In fact, everybody dies. He kills a lot more people out of paranoia. People just throw themselves off of walls. Things do not go wrong. Do not kill the king. That's the moral of the story. And in fact, a whole civil war erupts to overthrow him, resulting in more death, lots of death. But we have a very fun version of this show I will talk about after we've gone over the speech and talked a little bit about that, had a little fun. I can dive a little bit into what the Vixens have done with this as well, if you haven't had a chance to watch our show. So I'm going to do this. I'm just going to read the speech. Hold on. I have to get Lady M. All right. Was the hope drunk wherein you dressed yourself? Hath it slept since? And wakes it now to look so green and pale at what it did so freely? From this time, such I account thy love. Art thou afeard to be in the same in thine own act in valour as thou art in desire? Wouldst thou have that which thou esteem'st the ornament of life, and live a coward in thine own esteem, letting I dare not wait upon I would, like the poor cat in the adage? It's really fun to be this like really strong Shakespearean woman. The speech as a whole, and I'd love to hear what the other Vixens have to say, but what I don't like about this speech is the fact that it's really about convincing her husband to murder, right? Which isn't a great thing. But the sentiment underneath that is really inspiring as a Vixen. I think that Lady M, if she had gone a different way, could have really been an icon for us. She's a strong woman who uses specifically her wit, right? Very unusual for that time period, for women to be able to do that. Her strength, and she even uses her femininity as an asset or a strength in this male-dominated culture. And in the end, she also really regrets using that strength for evil. Even there's many scenes where she's, COVID style, just keeps washing her hands over and over again, or something about a pet, right? Out damn spot, like wants a dog to leave. That's probably what that is. But I think that's the using of her wit and her strength and just fighting with all she has for what she believes in, which isn't a great thing to believe in this play in particular, but fighting for action, fighting for people who have the ability to take action and make change to do that. And that's something that in choosing this piece for tonight really made me think of the notorious RBG, right? Is that strength and that wit. And she used it for good though, but I really love this speech. I want to dive a little bit into the text with a few minutes left that I have before we move on. So, was the hope drunk wherein you dressed yourself? So she's telling her husband, were you drunk when you decided to agree to this? Which we've all done that, have we not? Calypso, Bordeaux, lovely Calypso. A glass of wine can really ease yourself into things, right? It's not a bad thing. Maybe don't do it before a sword fight, but during the fight is fine, as you know from our version of Romeo and Juliet. So she wonders if he was drunk, and now that he's woken up, is he green and pale? So she's really making fun of his demeanor, his complexion, saying that he's weak and that the sight of the crown in his mind makes him weak and green, like he's not strong enough. And And then she says, from this time, such I account thy love. So they actually have what seems to be a very loving relationship in some ways, the way they portray her missing him when he's at war and all that. But she's saying that if he does not agree to this, that from here on out, this is the only way that she'll count his love. Another threat. She then says, art thou afeard to be the same in thine own act and valor as thou art in desire? So are you the man who is too afraid to act upon your own desires? And wouldst thou have that which thou esteemest the ornament of life, the crown, which thou have that in your sights, so to speak, and then live a coward having that esteem for that thing, letting I dare not, wait upon I would. So, you know, she's just throwing back words that he said in his face a little bit there. And I love especially this last line, like the poor cat in the adage. Does anyone know what that is?
I've wanted to know this for many, many years, and I don't know what cat they're talking about.
Yes, indeed. So there is an old saying at this time. So imagine older than old saying that this is a saying, a cat would eat fish, but would not get her feet wet. So she's saying you have to get your feet wet to get the fish, but you're too dumb to know that, or you're too cowardly to do that. And I really love that, alluding to that cat to get him to fulfill his ambitions, and leading him to, you know, utter ruin. But she was doing her best, all right. But it's
I was going to say it's very interesting because she also understands her societal limitations. She knows that in the world that she lives in, she has to rely on a man to make to bring her success and power. So all of this speech is about manipulating that man. She could do it herself if she really could, but no one's going to give her the crown unless they give Macus the crown.
Oh, so I said there was going to be no puppets, but there is a puppet. You know, because Lady M puppeteers Macaroon himself into doing what she needs, because she can't do it herself. She can't use her own voice. So she uses all of her power to make him be her voice, or her, in this case, point of action to get what she wants, which is really cool. Any other thoughts about any of that? I know we just kind of went for it there. Did that bring anything up for any of you?
It did make me think of the saying of something of like, the man is the head and the woman is the neck, and the neck turns the head. That same idea of, you know, especially at a time like this when it's not built into the infrastructure of society that, you know, a woman could possibly impact that level of change. So the best default that she can, you know, hope for is to be the neck and turn the head, or be that puppeteer. I love imagery like that.
And I think what Ruth has done is given more people the opportunity to move up to the head, to be the head and not the neck, which is really cool.
She had to be the neck for so long. She was the neck, having to sway other people in the direction that she's needed, that she's wanted to do. The only difference is that we consider RBG to be a hero versus Lady M, we see a villain.
Yes, Lady M, she is seen very much as the villain. Yet what's interesting about that, and I want to talk about our version just for a moment, is that, you know, we do our ours in less than 5 minutes, right? We have this timer on us that hopefully we always manage to catch. And we really focus on Macca's descent into insanity. And that could be started in someone's mind looking at this. They could say that Macca's became insane because Lady McNugget pushed him to do so. But I think it could be the witches, right? And the witches aren't necessarily a feminine energy. They're played by lots of people of any gender identities. And you know, on top of that, the scarves. I mean, those really mess with you. You're trying to catch them while you're juggling them. And their sorcerer really juggles around him in that show, and he has that timer on him, you know, and he's trying to just like fight with 2 swords, and it's a lot. And you know, he decides to turn against after he's turned against the king, he keeps going. You know, he decides to kill his best friend. He decides to, spoiler alert on McBee. He loses his wife and his kingdom and all of his subjects and young Seward, which is a small but important role, through his own hubris. So I blame him.
Yes.
Or the witches. But yeah, I love this speech and how it really talks about the power of being able to not just be the neck and the importance of action, but just, you know, steer that towards some good, you know, like, you know, advocating for women's rights or voting rights. Or
I did pull up a quick Ruth quote while you were talking. It reminded me of something that I knew I'd read on the internet before. And I have it here. It says, "Women belong in all places where decisions are being made. It shouldn't be that women are the exception."
I love that. I heard today that someone said, what RBG is asking us to be is ruthless. So,
ooh,
I know. You know, I love the puns, but yes, that's wonderful. Well, you know, I've been tempting fate too long by saying McDonald's and macaroon and all that. So maybe it's time to move on to our next speech.
Let's clear the air, even though my speech doesn't necessarily tackle a different topic, which is kind of a really great a bridge.
It's a segue.
Yes, a little segue, or a not really a tangent, because we're talking about relatively the same thing. Mac talks about. I think it's very interesting because Shakespeare is fascinated with power and the corruption of power, and King Lear pretty much talks about the same thing. I will be doing Goneril, the Goneril speech in Act 1, Scene 4. It starts with this admiration, sir, is much of the savor, to give anyone time to find it if you would like. But King Lear takes place in England with Lear, the king, and he is very old and he's retiring. He can't, keep up with the requirements of being a king. So it is his time to organize his retirement plan and give away his land, his power, his responsibilities to his only heirs, which are his 3 daughters. His eldest, Goneril, his second oldest is Regan, and then Cordelia, his youngest. Before he gives them his lands, he asks them, "How much do you love me?" As you know, most of the self-indulgent, self-obsessed people we know, very kingly, requires them to tell him how much they love him. Cordelia does not, and so she gets banished from the land. So the 2 people that are left are Goneril and Regan, and they get the whole land and responsibilities split up between them. And then King Lear retires, and he starts off retiring in Goneril's house in her castle, and he brings a lot of very annoying guests with him, and Goneril has to take care of them in her house. She has to feed them, entertain them, make sure they are happy and comfortable, and it is extremely exhausting for her.
Yeah, so for Goneril, things have got real.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
The realist. So then, she approaches her father with a specific requirement that she needs of him. And the speech goes as follows. "This admiration, sir, is much the savor as other your new pranks. I do beseech you to understand my purpose aright, as you are old and reverend, should be wise. Here you do keep 100 knights and squires, men so disordered, so debauched and bold, that this our court, infected with their manners, shows like a riotous inn. Epicurism and lust make it more like a tavern or a brothel than a graced palace. The shame itself doth speak for instant remedy. Be then desired by her that else will take the things she begs, a little to disquantity your train, and the remainders that shall still depend to be such men as may besort your age, which know themselves and you. So in this speech, she has had it. She is filled with people. She is listening to the lovely music playing outside her window, that these men just won't stop playing, and is at the end of her rope. Her father is not doing anything about it. And so she takes control into her own hands and says, these men need to go. At least half of them need to go. You can keep the ones that are besort your age, as in have a similar age as you, and know themselves and you, meaning that they behave in a more tame fashion. This is also a way for her to regain power. She now has a lot of responsibility and a lot of land. Goneril is also known in this play to be a villain or to be an antagonist because she fools her father into thinking that she loves him dearly. But in reality, she's just hungry for power. And so now that she has it, her father becomes an inconvenience. So everything that he needs and he wants, she just wants to get rid of. So the way that she does this and the way that she justifies why she wants these people to leave and why she wants to regain power from her father is by showing the debauchery of the circumstances that she's in. She raises the elements of court and a graced palace, and she compares it to a riotous inn, a tavern, a brothel. She's saying that this court that we have, that this country that we are running, is being run by people that behave in a brothel. So she's trying to bring honor back to, or at least pretending that she wants to bring honor back to the court. Yes.
I love that. That's making me think of how we have the opportunity with these shows and the vixens to play villains a lot, and how fun that is in a lot of ways. And you do have to justify those moments as we're, get to step out of our time as mercenaries and, dive into our love of the bard. And, we do things that might seem villainous, like we steal, borrow pieces of text that he leaves in his trash bin. We're not really supposed to be performing on the stage as women, but we do all of that, and that might be considered villainous in some ways. So it's kind of fun to play these parts, and that the audience can learn from their mistakes as well. It's almost, it's a bit of a service in some ways to be able to do that.
True.
So I think that after you, Melinoe, please.
Melinoe, yes, please.
All I was going to say was that, and don't you find that most of the strongest women are the villains as well?
In the Shakespearean text, yes.
That's what I was going to say. I believe that Shakespeare didn't really agree with the idea that women couldn't perform at the time, because some of the best characters that he writes and the best speeches are spoken by women. I also think that this speech is very in line with RBG, because even though Goneril is talking about her house and she doesn't want these people in her house. RBG was also, she came into a system that was run by men, and she was trying to change it and say, I mean, this perfect line that I love, the shame itself doth speak for instant remedy. The shame of the system that she was, working in, spoke for instant remedy. In it alone spoke for instant remedy. And so she took action, and she did the job that she needed to do in order to become the head and not the neck, if you know what I mean.
And that's reminding me, I believe I've seen just information that if it was not for her work in the Supreme Court, women wouldn't be able to, in the United States, sign a mortgage without a man co-signing on that. So literally, home ownership has shifted significantly because of her. I can't speak to, the jurisdiction binding Goneril at the time, but I don't know if she needed a co-signer.
I mean, probably. I'm sure her father was the co-signer.
Or the husband that she got. But I love that idea of like not just wanting it, but wanting it instantly. Like this calls for instant action. And that is something that is very RBG as well, that desire, whether or not that was able to happen.
There's also the line, be then desired by her that else will take the thing she begs. So that essentially means you can give it to me, but if you don't, I'm still going to take it. So you might as well give it to me. Like you might as well agree with me, because if you're not, I'm still going to do it.
If you know what I mean. Is there anything in the chat that we should be responding to at this time? Any questions so far?
We're just getting some positive reinforcement.
Oh, I like positive reinforcement.
If you know what I mean.
Oh, indeed. I can't embroider, but maybe Hera could embroider some of the positive reinforcement for me on some sort of pillow.
They said they meant it. Lots of positive reinforcement, and they mean it.
Oh, good.
I think that would be a beautiful embroidery.
Question.
Perfect. I love reinforcement when it's in large quantities. Maybe we should move on. All right. So do you want to say anything else about this wonderful speech from this evil person?
Well, I guess my only final thought on this is that we see Goneril as a villain. She does some villainous things. However, every coin has many different sides. Just like notorious RBG, every coin has many different sides. So no one can please everyone, and all we can do is fight for our values and what we think is right. Just some of them, not many people think are right.
Never murder.
Never murder.
Murder. And don't be so leery about your elderly parents. Help them. Yes.
But also, if my father's bringing 50 to 100 of his friends into my house and making me clean up after them and feed them, I would be upset about it too.
No social distancing.
No, that's a large group.
Yes, that's not appropriate.
Wash their hands.
No large indoor gatherings, if you know what I mean.
Sanitize the amount of space that they would take up.
That's very true. Yes, many of us don't have that kind of space that probably Goneril's had in a castle, but yes. Close. I'm very close to a castle space, as you can clearly see. Yes. All right. Thank you so much. That was wonderful. Who do we have third? Melinoe, sorry. Do you want to do yours?
Yes, I'd love to do mine. So just to give you guys in the audience a heads up, it's Henry VI, Part 1, Act 1, Scene 2, and we are starting with the line, Dolphin, I am by birth a shepherd's daughter, etc., etc. So while you are looking for that, I figured I would just give a little, since it's at the beginning, I'm going to give a little brief summary of the scene. So we start out with the French being overthrown by the English, And then the Bastard of Orleans walks in and introduces Joan by saying that she is like a prophet, and she's sent here to get the English out of France. Also, might I add, this is a very brief version of the scene. Really just glazing over it. Yes, so that happens. Charles says to him, well, yeah, sure, come on in. But you know what? Let's play a trick on her first to see if she's really that good. And so him, Charles, or the Dauphin, trades places with Rainier. And then Joan walks in and immediately notices that the Dauphin is not actually the Dauphin. And so Charles is like, oh my God, she's brilliant. Let's hear what she has to say. So Joan asks to speak with Charles alone, and then Joan says her piece, this monologue that I'm going to talk to you about. And then Charles is like, yeah, I'll fight you, but you know what? I'm impressed, and she yeah. So he's impressed by her monologue, but also agrees to fight her, and I'll get into that when I get into the monologue. Oh, and she has this other really great line that I'm just going to glaze over. But while I am alive, I will never run away from any man. So good. Anyways, so then they fight. She wins, and she's basically saying, like, I'm here to fight for the purpose of it all, so don't try and get with me, which he is trying to do. Anyway, so I think that should give you enough time to open up the
yeah. So he's jonesing for her, is what I'm hearing. Jonesing for Joan. Yes, indeed.
Jonesing for Joan. Bahaha. So let's get into the monologue now. Oh, you know what? I'll glaze over that later. Okay. Dauphin, I am by birth a shepherd's daughter, my wit untrained in any kind of art. Heaven and Our Lady gracious hath it pleased to shine on my contemptible estate. Lo, whilst I waited on my tender lambs, and to sun's parching heat displayed my cheeks, God's mother deigned to appear to me, and in a vision full of majesty, willed me to leave my base vacation and free my country from calamity. Her aid she promised, and assured success. In complete glory she revealed herself. And where I was black and swart before, with those clear rays which she infused on me, that beauty am I blessed with which you see. Ask me what questions thou canst possible, and I will answer unpremeditated. My courage try by combat if thou darest, and thou shalt find that I exceed my sex. Resolve on this, thou shalt be fortunate if thou receive me for thy warlike mate. So, what I was going to say before I started is that you will notice in the Folger edition, it is spelt Dolphin. So there's a bit of debate as to whether it's Dolphin or Dauphin, but Dauphin actually means the eldest son of a king, and so the heir to the French crown. So that is what it's referring to. And for the sake of me not picturing a sea creature every time I say it, I will be saying Dauphin. So there's that. Now I'd like to get into a little bit about what the monologue is saying, in the same fashion that I went over the scene with. Very, very vague and brief. So,
vixens in a nutshell, vague and brief.
Vague and brief. With no props, though, unfortunately, or fighting. Oh God. So this is Joan La Pucelle's monologue, as I said, and it's basically her stating to Charles, the Dauphin, that the Virgin Mary came down and made it abundantly clear to her that she has to save the country. So naturally, she marches up to Charles and says, "You know what? Ask me anything, or hell, fight me. Challenge me to a fight if you don't believe me, and I will show you that I am the best for this job." And also, you would be very lucky to have me fighting alongside you. So I just think that this monologue is full of badassery and wonderful girl power in true RBG fashion. Speaking of RBG, actually, no, speaking of, I don't know what to go over next. I've got 2 more points that I want to say.
Oh my goodness.
I know.
But they're both amazing. I want to hear them both at once, one word at a time.
Okay.
Go back and forth between them.
I'll interchange each word and you guys
Great, good. It won't be confusing at all.
What I wanted to say was that in pure vixen fashion, now we have not done this show before. I'm new, so I've never done most of the shows, but to give you a sense of how we would vixify this, we might take a dolphin toy and stick him on a little stick and put a little crown on his head, and that would make for a very interesting fight between Joan and the Dauphin. Or we might add, we might also amp up the RBG aspect of her character and put a little lace collar on her, perhaps some glasses. Yes. And so, anyways, what I really wanted to focus on was the end of this monologue. From ask me what questions thou canst possible, and I will answer unpremeditated. My courage, try by combat if thou darest, and thou shalt find that I exceed my sex. Resolve on this. Thou shalt be fortunate if thou receive me for thy warlike mate. I just find the end of this monologue is very RBG because, she's fearlessly or ruthlessly standing up and asking for a challenge to prove that she is the best for this job. Like she is so confident, and I love that it ends with like, yeah, you would be lucky to have me fight your war, buddy. And yeah, it's just pure bad beepery.
He wrote in this literal duel for Joan to engage in. It's so rare that we actually get to see a literal woman in Shakespeare outside of a vixen's show, written on the page in the original text to say like, hello, let's have a fight, let's duel. I love that.
And she's like, no, I was just going to say, and she's like, I can fight you with my words, and I can fight you with my fists. So, come at me.
Also, she references getting her strength from another woman.
Amazing. I love all of that. There was one other line in here that I was enjoying. I just want to find it. I pulled this up on the webs of internets. And it says... it's talking about Mary willed me to leave my base vocation and free my country from calamity. And just that idea of that drive, not just to free herself or her family or people that all agree with her, but her whole country.
Yeah.
That kind of cohesion or that belief in your country is something that's worth fighting for. As a unit is really lovely. I love that line as well.
Yeah, true. And just
yes,
the power that comes with that to free your country, like that's awesome.
That's an undertaking.
It's an undertaking.
And yes, a dolphin on a stick. I mean, there's many purposes for something like that. It's like very, very important.
We are getting enthusiasm for a dolphin puppet fight in the chat.
Perfect.
Wonderful.
We'll start writing it now.
Put it on the list.
I want to also include in future Vixen's show mentions to glazing over things so that Persephone has a snack,
Yes.
She loves the sweet things. So wonderful. Well, we have one more speech.
On to something lighter than murder and saving France.
I feel like this is a good arc upwards, it's like,
right.
Like kill someone, Dad, get out of here. I'm a bad beep. And then now we have like a little bit of fun.
Now we're in the woods and it's fun.
This is good.
It's very good. And it has been kind of my MO through our country's current calamity to, be finding levity every day. It can be very easy, I find, especially first thing in my day, to just be inundated with the bad news. And if I go to sleep that same way, that's not helpful. So I've been, trying to make a point to put the outside world away at the end of the day. So I do think one of Shakespeare's comedies is the best way to do that. So without further ado, this is not much ado about nothing. This is As You Like It. And this will be a quote from Rosalind, Act 4, Act 4, Scene 1, starting at line 168. So, I do want to mention a line from this show that I love before we dive into the scene proper. As the Vixen's Knight, there is a specific line in this that resonates with me so deeply, and as a lover of breakfast foods, Touchstone says in Act 1, of a certain knight that swore by his honor they were good pancakes. And that's just about the best thing I've ever read. So I love this play very much. Knights swear they were good pancakes. So in the context of this play, so Rosalind, who we'll be talking about today, her father was the former Duke. He has been banished, like many others. So now there is a new Duke, Duke Frederick, who is the father of her cousin Celia, who she is very close with. Never two ladies loved as they do. Do with that what you will. I read it a certain way.
If you know what I mean.
You know what I mean. Never two ladies loved as they do. But alas, they are very, very close. Celia's father's the new Duke. Rosalind's father's been exiled. And as the new Duke is coming into his power, he basically wants to exile Rosalind as well, just for being related to Duke Senior. And she pushes back on that and says, no, I've been here this whole time. I don't understand why this is a problem now. I've clearly stuck around for all stages of this happening, and suddenly, you are officially the Duke, and now it's a problem. So she does push back on that. And without further ado, she and Celia end up thinking it's the best plan to take to the forest of Arden, where this very farcical, fanciful comedy plays out, and everyone gets married at the end, and we love it. And in this forest, Rosalind, through a series of precautions and whimsies and delights, decides that she, like a vixen, is going to start wearing hose and call herself Ganymede. And she's comporting herself as this man of the wood named Ganymede. And I believe she and Celia decide to do it just because they're like, what if we run into trouble? I'm a little tall. Maybe it's helpful if I wear pants and carry an axe. So that's the plan. So then she is Ganymede, and they're enjoying their time in the wood. Now, at the same time, the two of them are crossing paths with all of these notes that they're seeing on trees, pretty bad poetry being left by Orlando, who is Rosalind's big-time wrestler boy crush. And she saw him at the wrestling match, and she made her affection known by giving him a little trinket, but he was so struck with love that he couldn't speak, and now suddenly he's also finding himself in the forest of Arden, leaving these notes everywhere, detailing his love to Rosalind, and they're pretty bad poems, quite frankly. So everyone's in the wood, they all know what's going on. Ganymede meets Orlando, so Rosalind as Ganymede, and persuades Orlando that he can cure him of his love madness if they meet each other in the woods, and Orlando airs all of his feelings about Rosalind to him, and then he can get all of the madness out of his system and he'll be a cured man. Obviously, there's something bigger happening here, and Orlando can't see through her disguise, but it's just some fantastic irony for us to indulge in. So, in one of these sessions between Ganymede and Orlando, Rosalind's wit is called into question by Ganymede. So in this conversation, they're talking about, examples of a woman's wit and things she may do with it. And Orlando comments, oh, but she is wise. Rosalind is wise. And Rosalind replies, or else she could not have the wit to do this. The wiser, the waywarder. Make the doors upon a woman's wit, and it will out at the casement. Shut that, and 'twill out at the keyhole. Stop that, 'twill fly with the smoke out at the chimney. Which I think is an amazing quote. So basically, what does it mean? It's a little simpler than the other ones, but basically we understand that Shakespeare uses the word wit to mean many things. Here, we're saying it's her intellect. That's literally what we're talking about, is her intellect and good sense, and that. Because of that, coupled with the wiser, the waywarder, I actually found a specific resource that cited wayward in this passage as obstinate, willful, and self-willed. So, literally saying, the wiser she is, the more self-willed she will be. Which is, oh my goodness, so much to unpack. And then after she makes this pretty quick statement of, I know Rosalind is wise. If she wasn't this wise, she wouldn't be able to, behave this way for herself, and therefore be self-willed in the way she is. And then she goes on with this amazing figurative language, just to prove this point of, if you make the doors upon the wit, they'll find a window to go out of. If you shut that window, it will find the keyhole to cram itself through. If you jam up that keyhole, it will have no other choice, and it will still find a way out of this house by going up through the chimney. It doesn't take any linguist to realize what she's saying is you cannot stifle a woman. You cannot keep her in this existing structure that you've created. It's idiocy to think that you could, frankly. She's saying it cannot stay contained in a literal house, whether that's Shakespeare trying to, talk about the domestic life that a lot of women were expected to lead, of literally being confined to the house and then finding its way to get out of there. I just love that sentiment so much. I think it's still so true. And for me, one of the most interesting things about this scene is, we hear these words and as a woman, I hear them and immediately I'm like, yes, of course, this resonates with me. But then realizing when you actually see this performed, Rosalind is dressed as a man and is giving this advice to another man, who, from Orlando's point of view, he just thinks this friendly man, Ganymede, is giving him advice. And similar to what we were saying, it's almost like Ganymede is being the neck for Orlando's head of starting to steer him down the right path with ideas of feminism, if that's what Shakespeare's doing here. But I think that's very interesting, the way that we can, in As You Like It, literally see the lessons that Ganymede is giving Orlando. And Orlando thinks he's just found this very helpful man in the wood who's giving him this sage advice. But in fact, it's just a man and woman having a frank conversation about these topics, probably for the first time in either of their lives. I think that's wildly interesting in all of these scenes and As You Like It.
I love that. I think there is something that tends to be true in certain circumstances, that sometimes it takes someone who's in the same circumstance as yourself to draw your attention to different circumstances. So in this case, a man bringing to the attention to another man the power of a woman, he might have heard that in a very different way. He heard that, and he might have actually let that sink in a different way than if Rosalind had said that to him for the first time. I wonder if that impacted their future relationship. Spoiler, they get together. But that makes me think of like Sir Patrick Stewart, standing up for people's rights, and I don't know if it's happened, but something just happened.
That was crazy.
I don't know. Nothing. What?
Night.
Yes. So yeah, that speech is so amazing. I love that breakdown of it, and just thinking about the power of this conversation in both of their lives, and hopefully not being embarrassed when all of it came to light, but just feeling like, oh wow, we have this camaraderie, even though we are so different. We can cross the aisle, so to speak, and work through some of these things together, and discover things together.
Yeah, in the chat we have, to use a current term, she was helping him unlearn, which,
Ooh,
yeah, I think absolutely.
like a Vixen's Unlearning series.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, which I think is just like a wonderful thing to apply to the scene. And then knowing that Melinoe was going to be talking about Joan tonight, I love the Joan of Arc story. Not to romanticize a real human's very tragic experience, but I think it's so fascinating in history. And knowing that part of what they used in Joan's trials that eventually got her executed, they found her guilty of heresy for dressing as a man, when she only dressed as a man so that she would protect herself from sexual assault, which would otherwise be much easier if she was in the traditional women's clothing of a time. So she would wear men's clothing to literally protect herself. And they used that against her when they were trying her for heresy, and they found her guilty of it on several counts. Every time she dressed like a man for a different reason, they would, make it a different count. And knowing that contributed to the end of one woman's life as literally being a crime, and then to see a woman like Rosalind, using this as sport, literally, to dress as a man and kind of seize her own fate. And I think there's so many wonderful tropes of, through history, seeing women put on a man's clothes to seize her own fate, or to change destiny, to protect her family, whatever it is. And this is just another example of that's pretty lighthearted, but having Joan and Rosalind right next to each other in this, I wanted to acknowledge that although it can feel like fun and games for us to put on hose, it was a crime, and your life could be on the line for doing that. So it's awesome that we get to do that and have fun doing it now.
Yeah.
I will say though, even though we do wear hose, aside from that, we do indulge in our femininity. Generally. Vixens love to be feminine, and we love to feel like women, which is very different from the time where these women were actually dressing like men to hide their femininity. So we are taking their strength in behaving masculine and switching it to feminine. That's the whole concept of who we are.
I think we embrace the polarity, or a non-traditional binary for the time in which we are referencing during our shows to live in. So that, yeah, it's really exciting. We enjoy strength, and we enjoy comedy. We enjoy moments where we're vulnerable, and those things don't need to be tied to our gender in a way, right? They are tied to the stories we're telling, and the catharsis we're creating, and the puns we're telling, and the puppets we're playing with,
and the fights.
Yes, exactly. And the fights, of course, always the fights. So it is nice to have some swords right there on the side to spare. So that was wonderful. What were you saying?
No, I just said the power of being human.
Power of being human.
Yes.
That was so delightful.
I want to pop in one more.
Oh yes. Is there anything from the chat before we kind of wrap this up?
We have a reinforcement of break the binary in the chat. Yes, break it. Please do. And a quote, just while we're talking about feminism, just another Ruth Bader Ginsburg quote, just to pop in there to maybe cap us off. Feminism is the notion that we should each be free to develop our own talents and not be held back by man-made barriers. I think feminism is a bit more than that, but
Yes, well, just the freedom to be yourself and form your journey. And all of these women that we were talking about today did that in their own ways to different results based on the storyline of the show. But I think that's something that RBG did was, carve her own path. And as vixens, that's something that we all strive to do and something we strive to inspire in our VITs. And it's just really exciting to hear all of these speeches together and see all your wonderful faces.
Yours too, Pandora.
Oh.
Yes, hopefully we'll be able to actually see each other within the next
Hopefully
couple years.
soon we can touch swords.
I can't wait to
You know
touch
what I mean?
you.
I can't wait to touch swords with you all.
I mean, our swords
Yes.
put together are more than 6 feet.
That's
So,
very true. But that would take just the tip.
yes.
So,
So we'll be observing a just the tip rule for safety.
yes, for safety, indeed.
Oh, safety.
For safety. And every time you said adieu, I just want to say that I had to stop myself from unmuting and going a-doo-doo. So, it was like literally 3 times I was starting to get a little cagey. I was like, I want to say it. Well, thank you all for joining today, and thank you all at home for joining us on the interwebs and indulging in our love of Shakespeare's words and our love of RBG and strong women fighting for what they want. And we're just really looking forward to our next streaming. And keep in touch with us on the Book of Face to look at for those next dates, as well as you can look for us on vixensonguard.com. And if you'd care to give us just the tip, if you know what I mean, you can find us on Venmo at Vixens on Guard. So thank you so much. I am Pandora.
I'm Alectrona.
I'm Melinoe.
I'm Selene.
And we are Vixens on Guard.